And we are live.
Okay, I'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting Monday, April 28th, 2025 to order. Items on discussion is the draft 5-year financial plan. Can I get a mover and a second? Councillor Whitesell and Councillor Savary.
Thank you, Mayor Doherty. First, I'm going to start by introducing Karen Sharp. She is our financial consultant and has offered to step in the absence of our CFO, Annette Robinson. She is away on a personal matter and couldn't attend. So Karen has assisted us, Annette, or Mrs. Robinson and I. We've spent hours going over this budget, but also with department heads, line by line, as we said, slashing and burning. And we're pretty proud of this budget as it is, even though there are a few errors that we will be presenting in a few minutes. But it's corrected, so we will get to that. And basically we built this budget from ground up again. So we made a lot of changes. And the capital projects and grants are highlighted with information in the submission for you. The capital projects that were discussed from the department heads that were brought previously in budget deliberations. And with their input, we've moved some to 2026, some to 2027, some for this current year. And I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Sharp now, and she'll take it over.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to just start with talking about budgeting. And when we have a municipal budget, we know that we cannot have a surplus, nor can we have a deficit when it comes to municipal budgeting. You have to come to a zero, which means that your revenues have to match your expenditures, so that at the end of the two line items, basically revenue and expense, everything comes to a zero. So you've got your, when you're looking at the budget, all your credits are at the top are your revenues, all your debits at the bottom are your expenses, and the two shall come to zero, basically. Based on that, starting on the capital page here, our package, I do want to make a correction. So on the first page on line 42, you'll see that there's a $45,000 item, the Rio. That one didn't get identified as an expense down below. So that is actually on page 4. Line 144, column H. So you'll see that on column G, there's 110,000. If you add the 45 to that, the 45,255 is the exact number. And so that number in column I changes to 155,255. Because if at the bottom of column I, you'll see that we're in a credit position of 445.
Yeah.
That's why that should have been at zero. I didn't catch that. When we were
Excuse me, what page is that?
Sorry, page 4.
Okay, line
44. Column I. Column I should read 155,255.
yeah.
Of the general capital fund.
Yeah.
Of the general capital, yeah. And then if we go back one page to page 3, line 102, column I, that should be 400,000 because the formula didn't
pick it up.
Didn't pick it up. We didn't realize the formula had dropped somehow on that column. So that's when you now look at page 4, that 445 is now a zero, and therefore we have a balanced budget. So,
Councillor White.
Go ahead.
It's a small potatoes one, but in your parks reserve transfer, there's 13,000 showing in that transfer, but on the reserve funds like list, we only have 10,000 going to our general capital.
I'll just pull that for your funds.
Excuse me. I'm working off the computer and so I don't have the pages in front. I have the pages, but I need to know the line item on the page that you're talking about, please.
That's in general capital, right?
Yeah.
It's still under general capital fund,
Okay,
and
It'll be page,
page,
is it page 3?
So we have, well, it's on pages 1, 3, and 4. So what she's mentioning here, Paul, is on row 42 of page 1. We see there's 45,255. Do we see that?
yeah,
nope, on the wrong page, sorry.
Page 1.
Just carry on, I'll find you. These were downloaded in sections of 3 and 4 pages, so I have to find the right email to open up the right page. Okay, Kara,
Carry on.
yeah.
that's okay.
Thank you for that, by the way, the 13,000, yes, I'll need to do an additional, on the Parks Reserve and an additional 3,000. I've made that note.
Thanks.
Okay, so, what I want to bring your attention to on this, capital budget is at the very top, page 1. Are you there with us, Counselor?
Yep.
There's the top line, borrowing long-term, $1.3 million, basically. When it comes to municipalities, there's a organized, the Municipal Finance Authority determines how much a municipality can borrow. And that is based on revenues, that's based on amounts already borrowed, and capacity to pay back debt. In BC, it is unique that way, where they have this third party that monitors the amount of debt a municipality can take on. They're a AAA rated company. They are separate and apart from any individual local government or provincial government. When I did the research for Cannell Flats, the liability servicing limit is 500,000. So to enter in a budget that you have $1.3 million borrowing, you don't have that capacity. So I've taken it completely out of the picture. I think when you come to borrowing debt, it'll be a council conversation as to when you take it on, and knowing that you actually have that ceiling, that it's not just a free, you can borrow whatever you want. So I just wanted to point that line out, and that there is a maximum that you guys have to always keep in check. And when you're looking at all of the capital wish list that the municipality has and the projects that are coming forward. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The other line item that I want to bring to your attention is line 12. So it has contribution from general operating, and in column I, it's 160,000. That has a lot to do with, you have applied for a lot of grants, but with grants, quite often there is a village portion and then the grant portion. It's not usually 50-50. It can usually be something more like 25-75%. But that 25% has to come from taxation or some grants allow you to take other grants and apply to them, but 90% of the time, or a fair high percentage, is that you actually have to come from taxation.
Yep.
So that 163 is from taxation to fund or to do the, what I call the matching portion for the applicable grants. I'm hoping that makes sense.
Is this the one, is that on the dike and sewer system?
The dike and sewer system is a different grant. These
Okay.
are all, so, if you flip to, sorry, I'll just look at, actually, no, it's still on page 1. So you do have the dike there at some capacity because it is
Oh, yeah.
the dike portion, not the sewer portion.
Yeah.
You have the climate action, which is the shore to shore portion. There's a large grant that you still have to finish off. Then you have some capacity building grant, again, shore to shore. And I'm trying to think which one other ones here. The Civic Center, some of that work is the charge up program. Again, all has it got on an amount that you have to match with taxation dollars.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to stress. A lot of your grants that you've applied for, they've been extended due to circumstances of the past 3 years. Those extensions can only go so far. Most of them are coming due this year, and the projects need to be worked on and completed this year. So staff has been given the timelines. Most of I think a lot of them are September of this year. So again, just knowing that you have a staff shortage and yet a high demand on their time to get these projects completed.
Okay.
So there's a whole bunch of tendering action, the actual action of doing the project, and then the financial reporting and the verbal reporting that has to happen in time for these projects. So just being aware of those. Yeah, I think I kind of want to bring those highlights as to capital, because I know when this was first brought to you, I had revamped a lot of these because of by the time we finished year end, we knew how much money of the grants had been spent, where we actually were, and Annette and I had worked on, or Ms. Robinson had worked on getting those actual numbers now in here. So that's why I want to highlight any changes. So I'll let Sylvia,
No, I think that's it for me for now.
Okay, any questions from council that I can help with?
Are we gonna go
Just with capital.
with the capital side? Why on the dike is it showing like, are we having the notes June and March of 2026 for the funding?
Those are the extension dates.
Oh, that's
those ones.
like we're saying, like that's our firm, it has to be done by, so that's.
Yeah.
That's the deadline.
Yeah.
That's if I may, that's the final report.
Okay, that's report date, okay. So but the dike will be done in this fiscal year, is the idea.
Yes.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
This summer.
Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So line 52. I see that we have the $75,000 on the 2024 budget for the fleet truck. And I thought we had talked about this recently and we'd gone with about a $40,000 number. I see nothing there. You just decided that remove that altogether.
I'm not sure why that's like that, actually, I thought we had discussed it as well. Oh, it's a transfer from CBT though, is that what it is?
Is that one? Oh,
So
yes,
is
I
this
see that
the,
now.
sorry, and this is where I'll need Chuck, and he may need to jump in here, the half-ton truck. Is that the truck that we're now leasing?
No,
That's a different truck?
The half-ton truck is one that we're wanting to purchase. I believe. Sorry, I missed it. First bit.
Yes, no, that's your,
So there's a fleet half-ton truck capital transfer from CBT, and
I
then it
think
gets,
that might be the van,
Well, yeah, that's fine.
but I just didn't see anything on here. Like you said that on.
oh,
That would be the best.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's the van.
Yeah, go ahead.
so, just to reiterate, I do recall that, and maybe that's part of what got trimmed out with that loan. Is my guess, like with taking out that loan, but yeah, I know that Chuck had asked for, it started off, I think, 75 or 80, and Paul suggested, I think, 50, and we all agreed it was gonna be 50,000. Use F-150 half ton or something like that.
if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
the public works truck, the 50,000 is on page 3.
Oh, sorry. one
Yeah,
more.
on line 92.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is.
I know,
Yeah, okay, well, there's a lot.
it's a lot, so, sorry, what line item was that?
92.
Okay, so 92, just to follow this through, making sure we got the right, so that's the coordinator truck for 50,000. The EV van that we were referring to is actually the cargo van, and that's 74,000, which should show up as well on the budget.
Yeah, I see.
Mhm. Thought
Where's
you'd
the
been flashed
expense?
right out of there.
We were,
I was just checking.
it's on page 3, on 96. And then the grant.
There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And you'll see, and that's where you'll see that it's 99,000 on the expense line. On the grant side, it was 74, the rest of that 60,000 comes from the 163. So that's kind of how it kind of bumps back and forth. And now you know why there were a few made still mistakes.
Okay,
But with that Ford E-Transit cargo van, we also were eligible for, I think, about a $10,000 rebate back.
That's included.
That's after the $10,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's was on the final price.
okay.
And I'm just trying to remind me, maybe Chuck can speak to this, for the extension of the Burns walkway, what are we gonna do on that this year again? Just for.
The Burns walkway?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's just the design.
Okay, that's just the design of it, okay.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, right, it's beady.
Beady.
Oh, yes, let's change that.
Oh,
Yeah, it's being
There's
not.
an error. That's right, you know,
And where are you seeing that?
That's what I was confused.
same, yeah, on line 106. It should be Beatty Avenue.
Yeah, it says Burns, but it should be.
Oh, okay.
There we go, okay.
And I'm sorry,
There's-
sometimes I'm picking up conversations after the fact. So is that a study or is that actual capital works happening? So this is something
It's a
that happens,
design.
It just,
if it's a design and it stays on the shelf, it needs to be as a study and we need to move it over to operational.
That's what it will be.
Okay, so that, the 214 would be for the capital, actual
Oh,
laying of that, not the design, so.
Oh, okay.
We need to put a budget in operational that pays for that.
okay.
Now, that whole budget was to be based on a grant application, accessible grant, and that none of that has been applied for as of yet. Is my understanding.
Not the actual work, no.
So, or the 214,000 that we're talking about, that's all based on a grant.
Probably got that.
Well, I'm confused.
Well, maybe I am too, so that's.
So, and it, basically, the extension on Beatty Avenue would be the finalization of the Headwaters Walkway, which is also part of the shore to shore. It's the connection to the shore to shore. So we were gonna use the shore to shore grant money.
Hang on, now that's something.
Yeah, that's what,
So the shore to shore and Headwaters walkway, that is budgeted on line 130 and 131. So if the Beatty Avenue and Burns is not one and the same thing,
No, see that, okay, and it isn't. So the Headwaters walking paving, that's the upgrade, correct? Mr. Cronk, yes.
Okay. So what is-
That's just the repaving. That has nothing to do with the BD extension.
so, and the BD extension is funded by a potential grant that we have not yet.
Correct.
So that we do have that corrected here.
Yes,
Okay,
Oh, I see. Okay.
and it's not Burns, it's BD.
It's BD, yes.
Okay.
I'll make that change. Okay. Anything else on the capital then? Did you want to speak to the hall?
Sure. So, the hall upgrades, council, asked staff at the last council meeting to investigate, ways of doing the hall upgrades based on the engineering report that was received. And, finance department confirmed that this work could be eligible through the charge up
okay, yes,
fund. That does mean we will probably we will forego the solar panels this year. However, the electrical qualifies and the structural roof upgrade will qualify. And then we can apply for the solar panels at a future time. But we can't put the solar panels on the roof as it is now, so.
yeah, it has to be upgraded.
Yeah, so, we were able to fund those projects
Good.
through the existing grant.
What was the name of the grant again?
It's the, CBT Basin Charge Up. It's the same grant we used to buy the EV van.
Okay,
It's a large grant. And it's the same grant we're using to buy the heat pump for this office, and did it buy the furnace as well?
Yeah, the electrical, HVAC, the vehicle, the EV van, was charged. Also the Red Capacity Build grant.
Yep.
That can actually be used towards, the civic center as well.
Okay,
So, there's that number that we had corrected, so it's about 155,000. That will be split upon, and whatever we don't use is that money that's coming from taxation. Some of that that we can then save and keep it in our operating rather than.
so that 163 would go down theoretically if we got another charge up grant. If the 163 transferring from reserve,
Yes,
we would eliminate that and add the charge up grant as our source of revenue.
the charge up grant is already embedded in the number.
So that was-
And there is a top up from taxation to help fund this.
Yep, that's right.
So the minimum of taxation that you would need for this project here is 37,500.
Yep.
And then so 72 of that is taxation.
Yeah, no,
So we can, if whatever we don't use, 72 would not come from taxation.
I understand that part of it. It's but what I'm saying is we have right now for the EV that's in there, it's put away the 74,410, that's for the van.
Yes, correct,
But I'm saying for the rec center, it's still the charge up grant is what we're saying.
correct.
That grant is not included as part of this budget because we haven't, like I'm saying, it has not been accounted for that part of it, correct?
It's the other way around. We have accounted, so 74 for the grant from charge up. The remaining of the charge up grant has been embedded into this budget
In the van.
in the van and the civic center.
Both.
We took it away from the solar panels and put it into the civic center for EV and HVAC, or electrical and HVAC.
Yeah.
Because our civic center is 155,000.
Yes. And part of that 155, the funding comes from the charge up program.
Well, but if you were to take 90 or 74,000, right? Divide it by 0.225, that'll take you up to the 99, which is the ban.
So, there's two kind of line items there. The 66,000 right below it. So you have the 155 and the 66.
Yep.
That second line, that 66 is the charge up program.
Okay,
So
and
that's a combined amount. We kept it separate for tracking of the grant.
yeah, so we're saying that that's 66 plus the ban. The ban's in there for 93, is that right?
For 93 is the cost of the van, yeah.
Yep, 99.
Yeah,
So we got
99.
99,000 plus the 66 is gonna be like 160 something, right?
Okay.
And then we were showing a total grant of 74,000. So we only had to contribute 25% overall to that, but that's more than 25% of the overall grant.
I may have, hang on, I'll just, the charge up program is the 74.
Yeah.
The heat pumps at 11.25 on page 1. And then the civic
Oh,
center for
there it is.
49. Everything is separated out.
Thank you. That's what I missed. I was just only looking at the highlight.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
And just for the record, CBT grants are always 20% contribution.
20? Okay, I thought she had said 20.
Yeah, it can vary.
It can vary.
The CBT is usually.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further?
Good.
Yeah, looks like we're good on that one.
Okay. Just wanted to go to the next package, which is the reserves package. And touch base on that.
Councillor Marcelo might be your last attachment.
Okay,
Know when you're there, no.
okay. We're good, thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of go over the reserves there when you're looking at your water development subdivision reserve and your water capital reserve. Those two reserves we could add together in order to work on water capital projects. The reason that the water development subdivision reserve is separate is because those are for off-site works. And it's there for tracking purposes, making sure that when somebody does contribute that flow through is very identifiable. So that's what those two reserves, but they are kind of one and the same purpose. Just to reiterate, thank you for pointing out that we need to add an additional $3,000 expense to the Parks Reserve, which I will do. Flipping to the next pages, you can see that your capital asset management reserve for 2025 is at 260. Again, that is for your general capital purchases. So you are looking at your fire hall, your public workshop, going back to our original comment of you wanting to borrow $1.3 million, not possible. You would be looking at your reserve funds. You have a $1.3 million project, potentially in 263 in your reserve. So looking at future, how are you going to plan out building some of this infrastructure and building up your reserves so that you can fund these, knowing that you have a cap on your ability to borrow funds. So it was just kind of a highlight comment for anyone. Your gas tax funds, when you're looking at that reserve and you're wanting to tap into there, the main purpose for those funds are your roads, your water infrastructure, and your sewer infrastructure. So it is not for fire halls and public workshops.
Go ahead.
On the gas tax, I know, interim CEO Hubenoff was worried because of the cancellation of the carbon tax that's happening right now. Are we still gonna continue to get those, like, those revenues each year?
We have not heard anything.
And I'll just, those carbon tax funds, gas tax has been in it for a very long time. My understanding, though, those are some of the base taxes that you pay on gas.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're getting that from the federal government back through to each municipality through the UBCM. That is not,
Not really.
has not historically been based on your carbon tax,
Okay, thank you.
okay?
And at the meeting we were at there, they said something similar, that the taxes shouldn't be affected by that.
Yeah, so they're a slightly different collection.
You're right,
pools.
that was mentioned in this last weekend.
So that's gas tax. Your equipment reserve, 110, that is for, the public works equipment typically, the skid steers, that kind of thing, which you had purchased last year. Sitting at 110, most equipment sits around there, so it's gonna be cut down fairly quickly if you need to buy something. On the next page, you've got your COVID restart reserve, and you can see that's pretty much fully consumed. It's $2.46, and we're gonna probably clean that out this year, because that was just.
Can't even get a copy of that.
What's that?
So you can't even get a copy of that.
Not anymore. And the reason why that has been exhausted is that was a reserve that was on a time frame.
Yeah.
You had to use it within a certain amount of time, and so that has been now consumed. So, sewer, just wanted to talk about the sewer.
Wow.
There's a sewer feasibility study. Now that is non-capital project. Again, so that goes back to my other kind of comment. We really have to be careful, do all the studies we want, but operations has to pay that. That is not capital.
Yeah, okay.
And therefore, should come through taxation dollars, not, or, frontage type project, funds. Arena's in a healthy situation. You've got good funding source from there, so that's not necessarily. The only other comment I wanted to kind of make was your DCC reserves. DCC has a very specific bylaw attached to them. They identify very specific projects and so they need to be for subdivision or construction. Okay, so, and these have got, those bylaws have very identified projects and can't vary. Now, saying that, $298 and $172 won't even, well, yeah, infrastructure, I don't think it buys us a valve. I think valves are around $5,000. So you might want to look at the rates, how that is structured so that you could make it purposeful.
Yeah.
For having that effort.
Billy, we've had, yeah, go ahead.
So that is on my work plan to review the DCCs. So the water one is for water treatment and the drainage is actually stormwater management plan. It is on my to-do to bring it back to council to review not only, you know, when it was adopted, the bylaw, it was very admirable. We didn't want to slow down development. However, that really is neither here nor there. There's a fine line between slowing down development and not collecting. It's not even really worth the manpower to keep track of this. $298, we spent that in labor. So I'm going to be bringing it back. It's also part of the new legislation for housing that the province did last year to task the municipalities to review their DCCs. There's also an amenities cost charge bylaw that they have authorized councils to pursue. So that's all part of the tasks.
I
Tax
actually did attend a workshop about ACC this past weekend, so.
Nice, okay.
But you're right, the GCCs, you know, development has to start paying for development, right?
We've only collected from two separate
Okay,
in entries. One was a subdivision, one was a commercial build. But yeah, it's not really worth it as it stands.
So the next item I kind of wanted to go over, which kind of brings in the general operating, but before we start there, because it's going to be your first line item, which is the property tax rates. So I'll let Councilor Marcel find that page.
Which one, sorry?
It's the
Municipal.
municipal property tax rates. So it's a blue
Oh, the one that.
single page. So Councilor Marcel, let us know when you get there.
I think we're
Yeah.
I think it's close
What's
to
the
end of
heading on that one?
he's got it, okay, go ahead.
No, what's
So
what's the overall heading on that? I've got general operatings and I don't have anything about what you just asked for. What's the
Municipal
sheet you want?
property taxes,
It's a big blue, it looks like this.
Yeah, you gotta tell me which of the emails under the headings. I've got general operating page 1 to 4, general operating 5 to 8, 9 to 12. I got 3 emails here with different stuff on.
I think it would have been close to the reserve funds one.
Yeah.
It might have been at the end of that.
Okay,
I think it was the last page in the package, to be honest.
unfortunately, the photocopier machine limits
Yeah.
how many pages we can put through.
yeah.
So I'm not sure whether it's the email side of it or the photocopier. I'm not sure who to blame, but that's why we have to send 4 pages at a time to Marcel, Councilor Marcel.
When you get the PDF, can you guys not combine the PDFs for him?
I'm not sure how Annette actually sent it out after, but
Yeah.
I think I'm not,
I know it's
it's actually the email that's preventing us from pushing out large amounts of data.
Mhm.
It probably would have been towards the end of the,
Mhm.
Yeah. I did read it when I was going through these earlier today, but no,
Quickly email it to you right now. It's just 1 page. I can, it'll take 2 seconds.
while you're on that page though, there is a correction near the bottom. It says total 200 or 2022. It should be 2025 user fees. You start looking at
Yeah,
these pages 100 times over and stop seeing some of these little nuances. Sorry about that.
Fine.
It's on its way. I can just kind of talk about the difference between market value and new market value while we're waiting for him to pick that up. When it comes to BC assessment, and again, in BC, we have a third party, nonpartisan to, again, the provincial government and to any local government that are outside evaluating the values of properties. Once they evaluate a property in January, you have a chance to dispute the valuation, and then in February becomes a revised roll, and that becomes what you have to, as a municipality, tax your citizens on. You get to set the tax rate, not the valuation. When you start with your tax rates, what normally happens is you look at what you had charged for your taxes the prior year. If a property got charged $1,000, then no matter what the valuation change is in a market, you charge that person $1,000 in taxes again. So it doesn't matter if their property went up or down, you just change the rate accordingly so that it's a neutral impact. And anything thereafter becomes what's called a tax increase. So you start with a tax neutral based on market value. The non-market value is when you have additions or when BC assessment determines a building is no longer classed as a business class. I'm not exactly sure why, and maybe, I don't know, counselor, or sorry,
Not a counselor.
Why that actually went down for their
It was
30,000.
the industrial assessment went down.
So was it actually a down or a rezoning?
I think it was a class.
So it was a class change. So that's how that can happen. So
Went from light to heavy or vice versa?
Pardon me?
Did it not go from heavy industry versus light industry?
Not last year, no.
No, this would have
That's
been a
just class.
business. Yeah, this would have been a business that was downgraded either to residential or the business got shut down altogether. Although the land itself would have had to be reclassed to something else. So when those non-market changes, that's where you can sometimes gain a little gravy for the municipality. So when you see a large amount of development, then that is considered new market. And unfortunately, in Canals Flats scenario, we actually had a decrease of $2,000. So there was no gain, and actual taxpayers are having to pick up that difference to fund that. It's minor, but $2,000. So that's the difference between non-market value and market value taxation. Overall, we're trying to stay mid-range with the tax implications. So we are at a 5.04% increase in the taxes at this point in time. That's our starting point.
So if I can take over from there, I did a quick survey. The average property tax increase in Canada is 7.29%. In BC, for 2025, it ranges anywhere from 2.8% to 12.5%. And I did a quick survey of communities surrounding us. So Cranbrook had a 5% tax increase, Sparwood, according to the mayor, is 10. Victoria 12.17, Radium 10, Kimberley 6.68, and anecdotally I've heard Invermere is 8, you said, or?
It was close to.
Close to 8. So we are in the ballpark, anyway.
Any questions on kind of how tax rates are determined then? Or where your assessments are? No?
No.
Okay,
Okay,
then we will actually move on to general operating.
the big one.
The big one. The first two lines are highlighted in red because that is what we have just kind of referred to, which is your taxation and the commitment to always have a 1% of total taxes from prior year moving to reserves, that 45,000. And then your property tax. So that's what the 5% is referring to. Again, I did find another issue. So on page 16, sorry, I might be wrong with my page number. Hang on, I'm just gonna. Sorry, page 3. Line 90 and 91. Those two lines should have been taken out. So there is not a $50,000 revenue, nor is there a $260,000 revenue. That revenue actually shows in on, if you flip the page to page 4, line 109. If we're looking at column H, that 310 credit is sitting there, so it's not a $50,000 revenue, it's a 360.
General operating, I think we worked on different page numbers here. So that's general operating.
Yeah.
Page 1 of 17.
Page 4 of 17.
Okay. And
And
what's
that-
number? Line number?
Line 109, and it's prior year surplus.
On page 3, it's
I
90.
got it.
On page 3, it's 90 and 91.
Sorry.
Okay. We're good.
And then on page 4, in column I, it should be 360. Now, prior year surplus, I will speak to that, which is a significantly high number. If you question how much surplus we actually had last year. Because as we were moving through the year and looking at things that were budgeted for, there were concerns that some of the revenues that were indicated on the prior year's budget may not have been matched up, where, for example, 100% of the grant was being counted for rather than 75 or 20%, the 80% spec grants, and then funding from taxation. So we were quite uncertain where we were going to land at a year end. So the decision was to not go into a deficit, but rather hold the line, be conservative, and move funds to reserves this year should we have a surplus from last year.
Okay,
So we are bringing that surplus in as revenue this year. And so if you do, and I apologize for this, Council Marcel, it'll be a lot more difficult for you because now you're going to be going to another whole sheet. But on the last page of the general operating, so page 17.
Okay.
Let me know when you're there.
Gotta get page. There we go.
Okay, so on column F, line 606, you'll see that we have a deficit of $1.3 million. That is a deficit because, if you can see on line 613, we disposed of or sold off for $1 the childcare building at $1.8 million. So if you do the math on those, we roughly have a $486,000 surplus in cash because that's an asset disposition, not a cash disposition. So that's where we can bring in that 310 comfortably one time. It's not an ongoing, hey, we can do this every year. It's an anomaly that we've done just this year to accommodate for the change in the budget process here. So I just wanted to point that out. So, beyond that, we have highlighted the grants, which is on page 3. I don't know if you guys want to go individually through each of the grant revenues, and to determine where things are finishing off. Or I was at this point in time allowing questions to come from council and seeing how well I can address the questions that are
Well,
out there.
let's
So
just go through it and see where we are at with each.
Okay.
grant. Yeah,
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So page 1. Maybe we should just go each page if there's questions.
Sure.
Otherwise, I'll let you, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, to
go ahead.
call it. Go ahead.
So right now, what we're looking at are for grants. We have a lot of them out there right now. We don't have any, or very few that have completed, right?
No, we have completed some over the last year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
every year we close some, we apply for some, we're
Okay.
working on some, it's always in flux, always.
and most of them have to be done
There's a
September.
lot that we've asked for extensions for though.
Okay.
At this point in time, and they're the ones, I'd say there's about 10 of them that have to be closed in the short order.
Right, and if I may add
Yeah.
as well, so there's some things like this next generation 911. Which
Oh, yeah, we
is
don't
how
need
I described it, it was a grant awarded to us without an application, I like to say it was money that fell from the sky. Nothing's happened because the province hasn't started their 911 upgrade, so we can't upgrade anything until they do their upgrade, so it's kind of a holding pattern. So I would imagine that we haven't applied for an extension because we haven't
Well,
reached that area yet. But I would assume that the province is gonna grant that because we can't do our work because they haven't done their work. So things like that. You
Okay.
know, so there are some grants there that you'll see the age-friendly program coordinator. I made the executive decision of sending the money back and terminating the grant. This was already extended twice. It was no longer going to be extended. We did post it at one time. It was applied for during COVID. We couldn't do anything. Then when Mr. Wakin started, he asked for an extension, hoping that the attainable housing and childcare project was going to be completed last year. It was not. And that's where the age-friendly coordinator would have assisted with the attainable housing.
Okay,
But that didn't come to pass. So in speaking with CBT, they just said, terminate it when you're ready, reapply. So it's no harm, no foul. We just sent back the advance that they sent us and we can do it again. So that one is finished for the time being.
okay. And the Fire Smart funding?
That one,
When we never got it, right?
we didn't, the fire department pulled their application.
Okay,
So there is no outstanding application at this time. There's no Fire Smart.
So there was a lack of resources for that granting, and that's why they ended up pulling it.
okay,
Yeah, by the time, there was a delay in that, application going in.
okay. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
This isn't on the grants, just on the prior page, on page 2. It was just line 68. Can I just remind me, is that just like something we get from the province every year, Strategic Community Investment Fund?
Yeah. Any questions on the grant? Okay, go ahead.
So I'm just kind of going through, on page 4. You'll see collections for other grant revenues. That has not been completed on this sheet. We are still waiting for it, and they are coming in. The 2025 rates. One exercise that will need to be done is for the regional district. The requisition is in. We just have to apply how much taxation needs to be applied to raise enough funds for that, but it's the RDK regional district tax that will be set for that, and it'll be just part of the bylaw. Basically, when you're collecting for other governments, it's just comes in and gets out. The only one who actually compensates you guys for some of the work that you do is the provincial. They give a small administration fee, and it is small. And it's a lot of work to collect on behalf of all the other governments. So I think it should go further, but.
Okay,
And then I kind of left the floor open to each page if there's any questions, because we literally went line by line, not sure more than what we can say about each of the line items, unless you have some questions specific.
yeah, go ahead.
On page 5, row 143, what are our special projects or legislative expenditures? That'd be ours in general.
I can answer that. So in that category, it's a place, we hold it for, it's actually spelled out at the bottom here.
Yeah.
Beautification prizes, Christmas
Oh.
contest, Remembrance Day, public campaign. It's all like where it doesn't
Thank you.
fit anywhere else. It's a glorified miscellaneous account.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's the roll.
No, it's okay. I didn't see it either.
That's the same with the next section down below, the
I-
grant and aids. Any of those gray shaded areas is basically a summary of the line. You know, that's how that kind of works, so that you can see what everyone is applying for.
Okay,
So you can notice that your grant and aids last year was at 7,600, for example, and this year it is 10,900, so that has increased.
Councillor Weiss.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
This one's on page 10, row 358. It's gonna be our plow dump truck lease. And $84,000 for a lease seems very, very, very high.
So we did get the information in for that, and it is going to be about, what was it, 7,000 a month? No, yeah,
Depending on which, if we go with, what term we go with for the lease.
So how much is it a month?
Depends for how many months.
Oh,
yeah, so that we can stretch that out further. We took a conservative approach and tried to minimize the cost of interest. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull out that 358. Let's confirm what-
Can I ask,
well,
why are we leasing a dump truck as opposed to buying one?
go ahead, Sean. Or,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I think because due to the cost, we would have to go to the people to go for a referendum to see if we can buy a snowplow. And this way, we don't have to do that. This can be a village council decision, which it was, that was authorized. And it doesn't affect our borrowing because it's a lease now and it doesn't affect our borrowing capacity.
So is there a bargain purchase option at the end of this lease?
I'll defer to Councillor.
Yes,
Brown.
there's the option to purchase at the end.
But is there a bargain one? Because sometimes at the end of those leases, like you only have to pay like $1 or something at the very end, because that over 3 years is $300,000. I think we worked out what was a new truck, 400.
Right around 300. They couldn't give us the exact number because the 2025 trucks weren't available at the time. So they
Right.
didn't have the exact price tag.
So I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, like, if we're gonna pay almost $300,000 worth of lease payments, I would hope at the end of that lease, we can buy that thing for a very, very cheap price. And that should be reflected then in our payment, but I'm seeing like $84,000 over the course of 26, 27, 28, and 29. You know, that would, I would assume the lease payment shouldn't be more than the whole truck itself.
Shouldn't be.
Correct. And we're still waiting for a lot of the data, and to be transparent with this budget, we have looked at 2025. We have not gone into detail on 26 to 29 at this point in time. We will still have to balance, and you'll notice at the bottom, a lot of them are not yet balanced for those 4 years. We were still waiting for actual financial data from the company as to where we're looking. So we did budget high on the expense in the hopes that it won't come to fruition, but at least it's in the budget so that we have that ability to move forward and give Chuck as much negotiating room at this point in time.
And if I may, this is how the village purchased a fire truck, because at the time, this was close to 15 years ago, and it was $500,000, I think, or no, maybe it was close to 400 as well, but 15 years ago, we didn't have the money for it, and that's exactly what we did. We were able to lease it for, I think, 10 years, and then at the end of the 10 years, we just paid out the small amount outstanding, and we had a fire truck. We still have it.
So then before, like, we move ahead with any lease, can we be privy as a council to just what some of those lease terms are?
Yeah.
Or is approving this budget kind of giving $84,000 per year worth of room to sign on the dotted line?
The council already
We
approved
approved
the lease previously. It's been months and months in the works. So council already approved the lease of this snowplow, so.
Like prior to Paul and I kind of?
Yes, yes. It's been that long that we've been waiting for this.
We might not have it this year then.
There's something
Well,
on
Yeah,
yeah, this is already on order.
yeah, it's ordered.
and you gotta put the money up front for it to get ordered.
Yeah, it's just, I hope it's not $84,000 for like 5 years is what I'm getting at, because that's the price of a whole new truck.
Yeah,
Expensive.
At this point in time, it was a placeholder mostly for 2025,
Okay.
where we're still looking at 26 to 29. So I might have just pushed it out all
Yeah.
of the
Oh,
year
yeah, yeah.
by dragging and copying that cell right over without the real planning of what's happening in the next, whether it's a 4-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. That I didn't put that, I don't have that information at that point in time, this point in time. So that is yet to be determined.
If I can ask
Go
a
ahead.
question, is this through MFA, the lease, or is it through the?
No, it's through the company.
Okay.
The name escapes me, sorry.
Just,
MFA is no longer
No longer does.
They don't do leasing. It's through them with trucks, but they're financial.
go ahead.
is there any way that this truck is coming up out of the US, is it not?
I don't know.
Is it manufactured in the US? Or is it built here in Canada, or where, do we know?
I'm sure.
We're not sure.
It's a Freightliner truck, but it could be made in Canada or the States. I'm
I
not
was
sure.
just wondering how that's, if tariffs are going to apply to this truck and will seriously change the value or the cost to the village. Is there an out on the lease if that is affected that bad? Do you know?
Yeah,
This thing could be looking at 25% increase on a $400,000 truck. That makes it's a lot of money. And, just where that sits, or will we be able to get out of that lease and get something into the reasonable end of the cost of a truck?
Yeah, go ahead.
I threw you to Mr. Prompt. Did you purchase it through Canoe?
yes.
Yes, so
So it's
Canoe is a procurement company that does work for municipalities, and they do Canadian as much as possible due to the nature of their business. So I'm gonna assume it's actually through Canada and not through the States. Because that is their mandate. You know, municipalities are supposed to deal with Canadian companies and not, you know, I can't remember all the acronyms, but the trade agreements are, municipalities are supposed to use Canadian.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, I think we'll have to look at the lease agreement and find that all out. Okay. Anything further? Yeah, go ahead.
On page 13, row 453. Just a reminder what that's for. It's for the Province of BC Housing Initiative cap funding.
I can answer
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
That is the legislation to review the zoning, to do the housing needs assessment, to do review the OCP, the DCCs, the ACCs, all of that.
Okay.
All of that. So that part of that fund has been used for training for asset management for staff. We did the housing needs assessment. We are paying for the water master plan out of that account because that was awarded and then we found out that was an eligible expense. So we're going to use grant money to pay for that. Anything else you can think of that we're using it for? A lot of my wages that and as I get into this review of all those bylaws, that my wages are going to come out of that. I can't remember. I think that's it.
Okay.
We may not be able to spend that $100,000.
Well, the OCP in itself, I know is expensive.
We're just doing it.
We're just doing a review.
So
it's salaries.
it's my salary and maybe a public hearing.
Okay.
Well, you have to do a
Public no, you don't actually, but I'm gonna rephrase
Yeah.
it. A public
Public
information meeting, not a public hearing.
Yes.
There's not a public hearing for it.
Row 477 for the data-driven economic development project. Which project is that? I just, some of these things I don't recall.
Right, that one didn't have any work done last year. Oh, no, it did. That is putting the Wi-Fi at the beach. We are hopeful that we are going to be able to do a survey like they did at the arena. So that was part of the project, the survey they did at the arena when you signed on to the free Wi-Fi. We're hoping to do that at Tilley Memorial Park. We don't have really, we know how many people are using it. We keep track of how many residents are there, but we really have no other further idea. It's too much work. The beach staff is only there a small amount of the day. So if we could capture some of that user information, where are people coming from? How many people are using it outside of the hours? What is the season that they're using it? Should we be extending having staff there collecting fees? Should we be doing it from May to October, or maybe nobody's there? We don't know. We have no idea. So we're hoping to get the survey done before the season comes.
And was that an MC?
That is, and that is an extension. That grant was supposed to expire in February, but in conversation with them, there was so much outstanding that.
So at the meetings this weekend, I did talk to Paul and Laurel, and they are extending it, and they to hire the same company to do the stuff down there.
Well, no, we would.
You would there, yeah, that's what they're recommending.
Yeah.
So, because they like what they saw last time.
That's all I have for general operating.
Anybody else?
If I can draw your attention to page 16, line 586 and 587, contribution to water operating and sewer operating. Technically, water and sewer should be self-funding through fees and taxation, frontage tax or parcel taxes. We do not collect enough to cover our operating. Therefore, taxation has to subsidize. And that is, this contribution is from taxation to water operating and sewer operating. It really is, not great. So that means that somebody in the village who doesn't even have the opportunity to connect to one of those services, never mind both, is subsidizing a service that they don't receive. Now, they may receive it, you know, in other ways, through the hall, through this office, you know, they're contributing in some manner for the greater good. But this $180,000 is extremely high. The sewer one isn't at, you know, super high, but staff is going to be bringing back a review of fees and charges for the water and sewer. We have the lowest fees anywhere, not even just the valley. I don't know anyone who's paying what we're paying in water and sewer fees. And this can't continue. It just gets more and more every year. And so in the fall, before January 1st, staff will be making recommendations. Now, this is the problem, is that they haven't been increased substantially, so you can't just double them. And, but what is the path forward on increasing these fees to cover the costs of just the operating?
And I see on your other, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, no problem.
I was gonna say, I see on your property tax rate sheet, there is like what, how many households do we have here?
535. 535.
535, so that means that's like, you'd have to increase them almost by $200 a household.
Which is, if that's, yeah, you can't do that all at once. It's gonna have to be whittled away. But you
Is it
can't
have to
just
be-
keep increasing it $6 a year when the cost of living is going
More than that.
way more than that, where every year we're falling behind. And while I don't wanna pay any more myself, this isn't feasible to continue long-term. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Per house?
If it was if it was 535 per,
Yeah. It's like $233,000. Total.
oh, I was just looking at just the marginal increase, but,
I was thinking.
oh yeah, I guess, yeah, because you're right, it's 200,000, it's 200,000. So yeah, it's getting close to 400 a household.
Yeah. But yeah, like we've had that discussion, we and Sylvia have had that discussion. Something has to be done, but in increments, that it's more of a, less of a pain to the people in Canal Flats. But we gotta do something about moving forward with it, because it should be looking after itself, is what, like, you go to any other municipality, that's what they're doing. And we're not even close.
And haven't for years.
Yes. And we do have other things that are coming forward with water as well, so let's see what we can do.
An Invermere just. An Invermere basic resident is paying about $2,000 a year, just water. Sewer included.
We won't be doing that.
We don't have to do that, but there's other things we can do. You know, I've been approached by a few residents now with all the water committee meetings. Maybe the discount is past its prime. It's lovely to receive, but it does cost us, I think there's a line item somewhere here, it's almost $13,000. That's money that could go towards the project. It really does, it saves $50 off a person's taxes right now. That's
Yeah.
not a whole amount that's not a large amount of money, but it all adds up in the end.
But yeah, to us,
Things like that.
yeah, to us, it is.
Yeah, exactly. This side. So just things that
Yes.
I will be bringing back to council.
Okay. Something we gotta get our minds around, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, anything further? Justin, do you have a question? No? Okay. I think that's it.
As a curiosity here, we don't show a total salaries and benefits number. We break it down by each of the departments. What is happening with the employees and wages and for the year? Are we looking at increasing? Is there?
Go ahead. Yeah.
For that. So a number of years ago, this is after your time, I think, Councilor Marcel, staff, the CAO and council approved a wage, increases, for a multi-year term. And so that is done usually once per term for council, so they don't have to keep doing it every year. So that was in 2023, yes.
Yeah, it's been a while. At one point, they were going to go along with what the union was doing for, like, in the region and stuff. I'm
Similar,
not
yes,
sure that's still, I don't know if that's still in.
yes, it is. So that's already been decided, and that information has been added into the amounts that are listed.
Okay. When you allocate, like a third of the cost of the fuel for vehicles, et cetera, so 1/3 goes to public works, sewer, and water. How has that number been determined? Is it based on hours spent by the employees and so forth? Because underwater operating, for an example, that's a $12,500 hit. Is that a valid number in the sense of time spent on water operating?
So I can answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Speak to that. In general operating, there is, under Public Works, there is an actual value that is used, and then that actual value is divided by a third. So a third stays with Public Works, and the
Yeah.
other 2/3, then 1/3 goes to water,
Yeah.
1 goes to sewer.
I understand that. I'm just asking, is that a valid number, for example, to Public Works? Do they spend a third of their time on Public Works?
That is a very common practice, is to divide the fuel and the Public Works, shop supplies by a third, that they are, basically working under those three umbrellas at all times. The cost benefit to try to track exactly how many hours they're spending exactly on water, sewer, and Public Works for those three items, when they could be driving down the road, checking potholes, and then at the end of the route would be the sewer lift station, for example. How do you divide that? When did it stop being Public Works and when did it become sewer?
Well, yeah.
It's not practical, and therefore
It's just, it would be
it's a common
difficult to do.
practice for, sorry, go ahead.
I was just looking to see whether you can reduce the amount of expenses that are going against the water operating, that's all.
Yeah,
So
no, I
you got-
understand that, but it is a
You
common
got
practice.
$7,500 in shop expenses and you got another 12,500, you got 20 grand worth of expenses. And I'm just wondering if that's a valid number in the sense, is that actual time they spend on on the water? So,
Mr. Cronk is saying it'd be pretty accurate.
pretty accurate, yeah, I guess that's the number then.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have to subsidize it, is there ways you can reduce the amounts? Obviously, and I agree with Sylvia that we absolutely have to raise our fees to make it fair, but could you just take care of the How far do we have to go before we decide to drop the discount, for an example? Could that be done at this budget?
It would have to be before January 1st. So we have time to decide that.
But this is a 25 budget, so you're talking the 26 budget before you get it done.
Correct, if I may,
Yeah.
because we've already issued discounts for the homeowners.
Yeah, that's true.
So it has to be still for 2025.
July. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Susan. Okay.
Any other questions?
How much money are we putting into the reserves of the water and sewer each year? I got a line 584. I'll find it, and then I can remember why I wrote a note on it.
So for this year, for water operating, if you look at your water operating, we have 180,000 dedicated to go to the water upgrades. And then for, and I'll have to find these. We're operating. We have no monies at this time under sewer reserves to go to. We would have to increase taxation to therefore turn around and fund sewer. So there is no money going to reserves when coming from sewer operating to sewer reserve.
Okay,
And just for clarity's sake, the water reserve amount is just for water upgrades. They haven't, or we had a discussion, we just specified upgrades so that they can be used for any project that is decided upon down the road. There's been no real decision.
speaking to that, since there is no decision and we're subsidizing it, why are we doing that? Because the fact is we could probably never borrow enough money to do any of those, the work that's going to be laid on us as a requirement. So to have a different type of plan that's not going to kind of cost, or that is not very expensive, right? And it's a discussion that council should have as to how we're going to approach those demands by Interior Health, because we're putting money aside, subsidizing it from the other side. It doesn't seem to be right when you don't even have a plan on what we're going to do. So we're basically saying something's going to happen, so we're going to put money aside while we take out money from our operating general funds to subsidize the water today. Is that not right?
I think if I understand what Councillor Marcel is saying is that we're gonna spend all this money on all these feasibility studies. We're gonna end up with a big bill and we're not gonna be allowed to borrow for it because it's gonna be more than $500,000. So, we need to take into account if we're going to spend this money to research what's going on in the water, just to find out that we're gonna have to spend money on something that we know we're never gonna be able to borrow to or afford. Kind of like, what's the point of doing it? Do I have that right, Paul?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm having a conversation with our MLA this week to discuss that exact thing. Where money is gonna be coming from if we have to do upgrades to our water system and how we're gonna go about doing it. So go ahead, Sue.
I'll just, from my experience, one aspect that provincial and federal governments look at is what is the municipality doing to move forward towards something. Building reserves is an indication that you have intention to do something towards working through the issues that are at hand. So going to having it come strictly from your water operating, in this scenario, not all taxpayers are paying into your water, reserves. So having it come from water or from general operating is a broader tax base. All those who use water in the village, whether it is through their home or through any of the facilities that you offer, it gives a broader base, and the taxation then comes from all users versus a select few users. So in some ways, it's a little bit of it's a way for all participants or all residents to contribute to an issue that you have at hand. It also shows leadership towards higher levels of government, that there is not a plan in place, because you're looking for a plan, but there is direction, that there is forward movement in where you're trying to head, that there are finances being put aside to solve an issue. So there's indication and good faith is basically, I think.
Yeah.
Also, the feasibility studies, as Scott McInnes said this past weekend, if we're doing the feasibility, then he's able to help us move that forward, and he's able to help move that up the chain. If we don't have any feasibility studies done and we say we're not going to do them because we can't afford, then we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak, and then he's not able to help move things forward. If we don't show any progress, then we're not going to be able to progress.
Yeah, go
If
ahead.
I can add too, our hope is that there will be grants available, that we won't have to borrow for that. And if there are grants available in small parcels, certainly not for the whole project, we're not gonna get a grant for $34 or $30 million or whatever it is. But even if it's a small portion, then we would usually you have to have that 20 to 25% share. Now you might have it if you've got a nest egg put aside. It's at least a little easier to top up. If you needed 150,000, well, you're close to halfway there or over halfway there. So that's part of it as well. Like we need to have some money in the savings account so that we can, if we do get a grant for part of the project, we can move ahead.
And this weekend, Trish and I did lobby a lot to a lot of the grantors about what our problem was. And that was basically what they said is you have to have a plan of putting money aside so that we can give you the grant money at the end of the day. And possibly Scott will be able to help us with feasibility studies and all that stuff too. So that's another discussion this week.
So when we contribute that 180 from the general fund into the water capital, that's part of what this plan is to do. Am I right with that?
I think it's just
Yeah.
From general operating, it flows through the water operating straight to the reserve. Yeah.
Well, this one's going into water cap, under the 180,000 from water operating, going into water capital, and then water operating. I'm just looking at the reserve.
Sorry, I'm not sure which line you're on, but I'm looking at line 119 from water operating.
I'm looking at, yeah, and I'm looking at water capital.
Water capital will be capital projects themselves.
Which is really where, I mean, the water capital is really where the water repairs are going to be allocated to from for this project. Sorry, how can I find this thing?
Yeah, we need to sort of build it. It's a one pager from water operating,
Yeah.
or water capital.
Okay.
Water service.
Yeah, so I mean, we can see from water operating on row 119, there's 100.
Sorry, you must be looking at water operating, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
So, yeah, it'll show the same thing. So 180,000 comes from the water operating. You can see on page 4, line 119, and it goes into water capital. So I would presume, because we're moving in from the water operating, 184,000. So really, so if I can break it down from the general operating, we are moving 184,000 into water operating. And then we're taking 180,000 out of water operating and putting it into water capital.
Water reserve.
Water reserve.
Well, yeah, water capital reserve.
Yes. Into capital reserve, yeah.
Yes,
Capital reserve. So really, if we can think about it in one way, that 184,000 from general operating is really going into our reserve for
Yes.
water capital.
Correct.
yes,
That's where I'm getting
Yeah.
to.
So if you want to do something significant and reduce the amount of money you gotta put into operating or operating expenses or capital movement, why don't you do 90,000 instead of 180? Still a significant amount, reduces the cost 90 grand out of expenses. Right?
Yeah. I hear what he's saying.
Do we have to do 180,000? Is there any rules? None?
I'm not sure, Karen, is there a reason we chose 180,000?
I think the indication was where we were able to maintain so we're going right back to the beginning, we're able to have a 5% tax increase, match our budget, contribute as much as possible to the water operating, knowing that is our highest issue. So that's where the 180 comes from, where 180 then goes to the reserves and demonstrates the need that we need that water
Demonstrates
reserve
good faith
to
on our
move
part too.
forward with the largest project that you guys have on your plate.
Yes, and it demonstrates good faith.
And so knowing that a 5% tax increase is a reasonable, is within the boundaries of what other municipalities, other areas are doing. It's quite conservative. You certainly could go higher and then put that money to reserve, but that's kind of the philosophy. You try to work your budget that you have all your operating costs covered and then try to maximize where you can put your reserves in for the costs that are coming.
Okay, go
I don't know if
ahead.
that answered your question or not.
So really, we have nothing in water capital reserve. We have if we have any projects that have to, any emergency that needs to be taken care of, we have nothing to take care of. So, $180,000 is only gonna get us into an emergency, into working on something.
Yes,
So, this is if we have nothing that takes away from that.
yes,
Yes, so that, if I may, so if there was a water main break tomorrow,
We're in big
we
trouble.
have no money to fund it without this 180,000.
Yeah, we're in big trouble, so.
And 180,000 to fix a water main break probably isn't even enough anyway. Doesn't go very far.
So we're increasing our taxes by 5%, which in essence is showing to be about just under $40,000 overall.
yep,
So we could take that 180 and we could make it 140 and we would have no tax increase whatsoever. We still have a pretty good amount going into our water capital reserve at 140,000.
If I may.
yep, go ahead.
Not having a tax increase is very poor management of the finances for the village. Because if it sets a precedent that you can't keep going long-term, that it's not sustainable to do that without. Part of the reason why there isn't much of an increase is also because we are short-staffed. So there are not a lot of new projects on here. We're just trying to keep our head above waters. But if you wanted to do a major project and it's not advisable to not have a tax increase.
And Alfred did the same thing a few years ago, and they didn't have a tax increase for 2 years in a row, then it went up to 40%. Because right after COVID, they had a lot of stuff they had to deal with. And there was actually a lot of towns that did that didn't raise taxes during COVID. And when they came out of COVID, it was a lot of taxes were 22 to 40%.
18%,
Yeah.
17.6.
So it's not
Just a comment on this. I'm not arguing. Like Andrew says, we could do zero taxes, but we haven't faced, I don't see anything in here for expenses for recruiting a new CAO, or is there? And then I missed it. We've got an expensive year coming, and if we could save money in the water system, still get a raise, still put some in, and have it put into general reserves to handle situations like hiring a new CAO and the cost of that, plus other staff that's going to come on board, needs more training and so forth. Those are going to be some expensive months coming up. And it probably would be better in the general operating than it would be in the water. Particularly since you haven't got a plan on how much money you got. But if you grow your reserve by 90 grand versus 180,000 and put the rest of it into a different reserve where you can use it for other things, because once it's in the water reserve, you have to use it in the water reserve. Am I right?
go ahead.
If there is a line item dedicated to recruitment for $10,000.
Do you think that's satisfactory? No? And it doesn't really matter. It's just that if you put it into water reserve, does it have to stay in water reserve? Or could you take it back to general capital later?
Go ahead.
General operating.
You can internally borrow from one fund to another. So if you have something that comes up in general operating, you are allowed to then use water reserves as long as that, it is considered internal borrowing and you eventually pay that back to water operating. And vice versa. If water operating has to borrow from general operating reserves, then typically you then have to internally borrow and replace the funds in the future back to water operating. So nothing internally is set in stone other than the DCC funds. Those are pretty much a done deal. And so again, I go back to there's a core issue within the village that you have a water, someone is holding a stick over your head basically with your water. Having some good faith presentation where you're putting monies into a reserve will give you the potential to have grants in the future. Whether you have a plan or place, but you're working towards a plan, you're showing everything that you are capable or have capacity to deal with. And with that, more doors open than shut. And I guess for me, as long as I've been in finance, I've always tried to maintain the philosophy of keep as many doors open as possible so that you are flexible in how you can respond to different scenarios that come at you, whether it is needing to shift which fund you're taking it from, knowing that you're internally borrowing. It just gives you that flexibility. Thank you. I'll stammer for trying to find the right word.
No,
Does that make sense, Council Marcel, or does that help answer the?
Well, it's the same thing. We just keep borrowing or putting money in reserves without a plan for where it's going to go. And basically, if you think about all the it's a discussion to be had on the water system, because basically if you raised everybody's taxes $1,000 or water bills $1,000 a year, you wouldn't be able to even do the treatment plant, let alone anything else from what we understand. So why don't we work on real life?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I think, increasing the reserve funds right through is good business. Because currently we have no asset management plan on any of our assets. So by adding a little bit of funds there, where you're managing your assets and you know that hey, your water is going to need to be replaced in 50 years, every pipe in the tank, whatever. You have to save money for that. Otherwise, 50 years down the road, there's a 400% increase in taxes to pay for it all at once. If we don't start saving it now, that's a terrible plan. It's awful.
And that's kind of what, when I talked to Scott, that's kind of what he asked us, what we had in reserves. And I called, we didn't have very much in reserves. So he kind of said it looks better if we have a plan in place, and we will get a bigger grant in the end.
Because if I
Yeah, go ahead.
when you do apply for a grant, you have to say what's confirmed, what's not confirmed for funding. You have to prove that you have your portion of the,
Yes.
if you were successful, could you pay for your portion? And right now, I have to say no.
So is there anything stopping us from waiting until the end of the year or waiting until our September before we make that commitment to 180,000 or 184,000 from the general operating? Wouldn't it make more sense to keep it right now or keep half of it, something like that, 90,000 in general operating until we realize at the end of the year we don't need it and we take that one big pot of money and we then transfer it over into the water capital reserve?
Go ahead, Karen.
So absolutely. This is a budget. It gives you a guideline of what you're going to be doing, but you are not held to it with any kind of shackles.
Okay.
So if this, and that's kind of the comment to the leasing of the vehicle, we budget conservatively in the hopes of that cost will be less. We budget to move to reserves like last year. Because of the way things were happening last year, we did actually not transfer things to reserves because we were unsure where we were going to be in a position where we could. So now that we have some numbers, we're bringing that money back in. And again, every year, finance team has to look at it and say, does it make sense? Are we able to even do what we said? Because if there's a catastrophe of some sort and all the monies has to go in a different direction, well, no, we're not going to be forced to put that money into reserves that way. So yes, it's a good indication of where we want to head. Do we have to do it? No. Do we, well, if, make it a note that we come back to council and say, let's review that. Here's our actual numbers. Where are we sitting towards, you would look at that in October of this year and say, are we on track? Can we do that? Yes, no, let's make a decision.
So Councillor Marcel, I think if I understand everybody correctly, then we can keep the water reserve account. If we end up running over in our general operating, we can kind of use that as a balance.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to move it around in a maybe it's not an emergency all the time, or just not locking it in is what I don't want to see. If you lock it into going to the capital reserve, water capital, you could get it out, but you have to pay it back, I think is what you said. And that puts a different strain on it again.
And Karen, you don't have to pay it back within that year. So we have time to pay it back over time. It doesn't have to be paid back at one year.
And we won't make that allocation until the end of the year anyway.
That's
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It was just, when we were asked at how much we had in reserves by the MLA, we didn't have $288.
Yeah.
We was not very impressed. So we're having another meeting with them at the end of this week, so.
You roughly started with 80,000
Yeah,
You were asking.
at the beginning of the year was your opening balance for reserves in water.
yeah.
Sorry, you were asking about DCC.
Yeah, DCC, sorry.
That's DCC, which is different.
Yeah, no, that was,
But even $80,000 does not get you very far in water.
no, but that's what he was talking. DCCs, because we don't have very much in, Kimberly has a lot, and so does Invermere, but we have zero, pretty much.
But even still, 180 isn't gonna get us very far.
No, but it
That's right.
shows that we're looking for, or looking ahead.
So,
But, and it's still not, it's allocated to the reserve. It doesn't mean that we can't borrow from it if we have to. So, okay, anything, go ahead, go ahead.
So just as we move through this, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that it's a quarter after 4, and usually staff is out of here at 4:30, so. And I know that it takes time, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
be mindful of our time, that's all.
Yep. Next thing, anybody got any questions on anything else? That it?
And yeah, so, yeah, that's the end of the budget presentation from. Unless another question.
Yeah, I'm just slowly going through, look at my marks. I'm guessing it's just an addition error on the sheet, but for the attainable housing sheet, I noticed the prelim with changes, there's nothing in the revenue section, but I think it's just a.
Oh, I think I did see that. Yes, yeah, the revenues didn't carry through, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thought it was there. I think I don't thought that, but. Thank you.
You have a question, Paul?
I was just trying to find the right page here.
It's also the one page.
Yeah.
Oh,
Could we get an explanation on the lines 25, 26, and 27? The new space is $100,000 a year. Childcare, new spaces fund. I'm in expenditures. Yeah, so on the attainable housing project side, just what's that money for?
I'll speak to the 26 to 29. Those are formulas in there. And again, we were concentrating on the 2025. I have not verified how long those new grant fundings will continue. So at this point in time, I would be more inclined to zero them out until further research.
Yeah, they're, okay. So those are basically just,
Those are just formula.
Yeah.
Yeah, the spreadsheet that we had picked up basically took everything and added 3.5% to everything, which again, when it comes to grant money, that's not appropriate because grant money isn't gonna come that way. We wish it would.
For the sewer capital, we have, on page 1, we have amounts that are coming from the asset management reserve, from the COVID reserve, and from gas tax, but I'm not seeing them reflected in the reserve fund transfers. Unless I'm on the wrong page or looking at something incorrectly. So if we start with row 16 first,
okay.
Asset management.
that's for 153.
Oh, mhm.
So I think we need to add that onto the reserve continuity.
I think I started with a transfer to sewer capital and, oh no, it should say transfer from sewer capital. Yes.
So the asset management fund is not 263, it's 263 minus 150, so like 210-ish.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 110-ish. And then the COVID reserve was the next one for 47,000.
We missed that one entirely.
I'd add 40,000 to that one, sewer. And then there's the gas tax one. 6,000.
Looks like the sewer capital wasn't reviewed again. Okay,
Good catch.
And lagoons happening this year?
The lagoons are
Yes.
happening this year, yes.
Excellent. Happy Chuck?
Chuck's going out there with the shovel.
A question on the revenue, I guess it's sales of service. What is protective service revenue? Line 26 of page 1 of 17.
Sales of service on which one, sorry?
Protective services.
Oh, on protective service.
Just curious as to what that is.
we're on general operating.
Yeah,
It's,
back-
yeah, page 1 of 17, under the general operating. It's revenues, and then it's sales of services.
Then protective services revenue.
Yeah,
That is when your fire department goes out, they're doing some training. And, they're compensated, a little bit more than what the actual expense is.
yeah, okay.
And, last year, everything was, put into this. However, when it comes to their donations, and I just ironically had this conversation with Zach this morning, their donations that they receive and their fundraising, those are actually capital in nature. And so that revenue should be reflected in the capital account, and then any excess gets moved over to the reserve. So that conversation, and that accounting hadn't been happening, so we're correcting that in 2025.
Thank you.
That's what the 7,800-ish would have been from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a combination of both donations and that training revenue, and so that's where it sits now. It's nothing we can do about the past, but we can certainly correct the current and future transactions.
Any other questions? No?
Go down my list, hold on.
Okay.
You have a resolution on the floor to approve the budget as presented.
Yeah, he's still looking through the list.
Oh, he's
Oh, yes.
sorry, I said yes.
Oh, if somebody's got a question, go ahead.
No,
No, we're just waiting for you.
Okay, think we're good. Yeah,
Okay.
That-
Oh, he's good? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Go ahead.
So there's a resolution on the floor that the 5-year financial plan be approved, 2025-2029, be approved.
Can I get a mover and a seconder?
We
Oh,
we have movers and seconders.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just reminding.
I need it closed off.
Okay. All in favor? Carried.
Are you
All
in favor?
against?
Sorry, are you in favor, Councilor Musso?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the next one is the setting a special council meeting date for the tax bylaws. So council has 2 options. Staff can prepare, if we set a special council meeting either for May 6th, 5th or 6th, which is the Monday, next Monday or Tuesday, because then, Mrs. Robinson and I are away the 7th, 8th and 9th to LGMA. So we can either do 3 readings of the tax bylaws next Monday and adopt it
The Tuesday,
on the following council meeting, which is the 12th.
okay,
Or, and this is my least favorite option, have the 3 readings on the 12th and call a special council meeting between the 12th and the 15th. Keeping in mind you can't have a meeting within 24 hours to adopt the bylaws, but that scares me in case the flu comes for all of us. So if we could set a special council meeting, you can zoom in if it should only be a few minute
Yeah.
meeting anyway. Those would only be the 2 options to read those bylaws. And then,
what is your guys' pleasure? May the,
Yeah, May the 5th works for me. I'd prefer to zoom in if I can.
Yeah.
I'll be here for the water committee meeting,
oh, you guys have a water.
but it's only 5:30 to,
Okay, we could meet at 6:30 still. If it's a smaller group, we could use the, council
Yes,
chamber
yeah.
table.
Yeah, and if it's in the evening, I don't mind coming by. It's just in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah, no, I would prefer the evening as
Okay.
well,
It's
because it's gonna be
actually,
a short week for me. Is that gonna work for you?
it's actually listed for 6:30, yes, both of those days work.
Oh, okay, perfect. So May 5th then at 6:30?
yeah, May 5th.
And what time?
6:30?
Okay, yes, I will be.
Okay.
Okay. Then I guess, is there anything?
I need a mover and a second.
Can you get a mover and a seconder for that? Councilor Whitesell and Councilor Reed. All in favor? Carried. All opposed? Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, then can I get a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Councilor Reed and Councilor Whitesell. All in favor? Carried. Okay.
Good meeting. Will you be joining us tonight, Paul, or no?
Plan to.
Okay.